Hello and welcome to Homemaking with Joy. My name is Rachel and today I am making some hamburger buns for dinner. I'm using freshly milled flour. You're welcome to use all-purpose, and this is a yeasted recipe. It's currently nap time and I'm going to make them for dinner, so that tells you how quickly they come together. So without further ado, let's get started. If you are using all-purpose flour, feel free to skip ahead, but I need to make my flour. I like this recipe with hard white wheat, so I am going to grab these wheat berries, put them in my mock mill, I will show you in a minute, and get them ground into flour. For me, a half a cup plus 1 tablespoon of wheat berries equals 1 cup of flour. So I'm just going to use that measurement. I believe the recipe is between 3 and 3.5 cups of flour. So with any dough product, the amount of flour can definitely vary. Use your best judgment, and I will show you what my dough looks like when it is correct. Let's do it. This is my mock mill. It's the most basic model and works perfectly for my needs. So I'll take the lid off. The on switch is right here, and then I will measure out my wheat berries, put them in the top, and they will come out flour right here. I do have it on the finest setting too. Flour is done in the mill, and while that was finishing, I got some of my ingredients prepped. Here is my mixer. I have 1 cup of warm milk. You combine the milk and the yeast first so it can proof. I need 1 tablespoon of yeast. All right. Swish that around a little bit and let that sit and proof and get a little bit bubbly while I finish getting the rest of the other ingredients out and ready. It's time to add the rest of the ingredients. I have a 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 egg, and a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to mix these together and then add my flour. My egg yolk isn't breaking up, so I'm going to break that now and then add my flour. So because I'm using freshly milled flour, I'm going to mix this up a little bit and let it sit for maybe 5 minutes. Freshly milled flour takes longer to absorb the liquids and the fats that are in this mixture. If you're using all-purpose flour, feel free to just knead it until it's ready to go. But I'm going to combine these so the flour is touching water everywhere and then let it sit a little bit. That's the consistency I'm looking for right now. I'm gonna let that sit. It looks pretty wet, so I'm not gonna add more flour yet because I know it will soak up some of those liquids. But again, with doughs, you may have to add more or less flour depending on your circumstances. So I will be back in a couple minutes. This has been sitting for a couple minutes, so I'm going to knead it and see what the dough looks like. Yeah, that's super wet. I definitely need more flour. So this is maybe not what most people do, but I choose not to use freshly milled flour for everything. I try to, but my kids are currently napping and running. One of them just woke up. So I'm not going to run the mock mill again. They may have just heard me run the mixer. I'm just gonna grab some all-purpose flour and throw in there until it's the correct consistency, because we're getting mostly milled grains and it's fine. It would be more unhealthy for me to stress about it than to just use a little bit of white flour. So I'm gonna chuck that in, mix it a little bit, and then go get a kid. Both kids are awake, the canner's going, and I'm super duper multitasking. So this ran for 6 to 8 minutes according to the recipe, and then I got the dough out because sometimes you just can't really tell if it's done yet until you get your hands on it. So I kneaded it a little bit like this. It's supposed to be smooth and elastic, which I'm getting here. I'm also gonna check for the window pane test, and that is when you take a chunk of dough, and if you can stretch it enough to see light through it, like a window pane, then you know the gluten is developed. I'm talking quickly because I have to. So here we go. It is stretchy, and I can see light through it. I don't think you can. There you go. You can see light through it back there before it rips. That is good enough for me. So I'm gonna chuck it back in here, put a lid on it, let it sit for 60 to 90 minutes to rise, and then I will shape the rolls. It has been a little over an hour that my dough has been rising, so let's check it out and separate it into rolls. Here we go. Let's separate it into 8 pieces. Oh, my oven is just preheated. You could use a bench scraper, but I can't use a bench scraper on my countertops, so I just rip it into 8 equal-ish pieces. You'd be more than welcome to weigh these to make sure they're even, but I do not bother. So I have my baking sheet here ready to go, and I have my rolls. So I shape them, I pull the outsides down to make a singular point at the bottom, and then pinch them together. That's one way to do it. So you have like a messy side here on the bottom that would go down. The other way to do it is to roll it. So with like a claw here, you roll it and use the tension of the countertop to pull that side under. So again, thumb pushes this way, pinky this way, and you roll it like that. And the tension creates a nice ball. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter. They're gonna taste really good and your family's gonna be super impressed. One thing about this recipe is that when you bake them and then when they rise, they go up, but they do not spread out. So if you want them bigger, like to accommodate rolls, or hamburgers rather, you wanna squish it down a little bit. So make it into kind of a puck, and then it'll grow up this way. It will not expand this way on its own. You have to squish it. There's one. So I'm gonna show you the pull down method. Pull it around, rotate, pull it around, and that's creating tension on the top to create a smooth ball. All this stuff on the bottom, you can just kind of pinch it together, and then we're gonna flatten it into a disc like that, which seems counterintuitive to squish it, but they will rise. So this one I'm gonna do my fingers like this. Oh, my countertop. There we go. Squish. Because after I shape these, they're gonna rise for about 30 minutes or until they're just a little bit puffy. And then we will bake them. I have my oven preheated to 375 degrees. I'm also making dinner, so my potato fries will also cook at 375 because that's what you gotta do when you're multitasking and feeding a family. I'm going to toss a towel over these and let these rise for 30 minutes until they're a bit puffy. It's been 30 minutes. In a perfect world, I would let these rise a little bit more, but we need to get dinner going. So these are going in the oven. I just pulled my rolls out of the oven. They're lightly browned. I'm going to put them on the cooling rack right away, otherwise the bottoms will burn. They're super nice. The lighting is not great right here, but I'll show you what they look like on the cooling rack. So a couple of them, actually a lot of them did split, and that's probably because I did not let them rise long enough before putting them in the oven. That burst of heat made them rise and expand more quickly, but they're just for my family and it's totally fine. They're gonna get cut in half anyway. So, these are super soft, easy to cut, squishy. These could also easily be made into dinner rolls if you needed that. Enjoy!